Listen in. Starbucks. It's a great day for coffee.
You know when you reach that age where everyone and their mother won't shut up about their credit scores, yet it seems like no one really understands what's so special about those 3 random numbers? That's because credit scores are meaningless, unless you have Credit Karma to show you how to use them. We use those 3 random numbers, plus your financial profile, to help you find your next opportunity. Like a more rewarding credit card, a game plan that helps you pay down debt faster, or a personal loan to help you save more on interest payments each month. Cha-ching! Download Intuit Credit Karma today to get started.
Today we share our Week 7 D3 Coaching Coordinators of the Week presented by Hanson Ratings. And joining me to share about the coaches we've selected this week is the creator of Hanson Ratings, Logan Hanson. Logan, as always, great to be talking D3 football and the coaching that's happening around the country.
Yeah, it's great to be here, and I'm really excited to talk about the staff that we're going to honor this week. We had some great performances.
Let's get right into it and start with our D3 Offensive Coordinator of the Week.
This week's Offensive Coordinator of the Week is Mason Espinosa for DePauw, who beat Denison 53-34. This was the 5th game out of 6 games this year where DePauw scored at least 50 points. And they did it this week against a team that was undefeated in conference and maybe their biggest challenge of getting to a conference title, and that's Denison. They did it with over 250 yards passing, over 200 yards rushing. They scored on their first 7 drives, and I always kind of like to see one stat that really sticks out. And this week for DePauw, that stat that stuck out was their 3rd down efficiency. They were 6 of 9 on 3rd downs, and while 67% is pretty great, the fact that they only faced 9 3rd downs on the entire game is also just a testament to how explosive they were being on offense. The best way to have a great 3rd down efficiency is to avoid 3rd downs altogether, and they did a great job at that. So congrats to Coach Espinosa and their staff this week on a great performance and a great season so far from DePauw.
Yeah, let's talk to Coach Espinosa, who has a long-time relationship with the NCAC, having been a quarterback at Ohio Wesleyan, now the offensive coordinator at DePauw. Right, we have our D3 Offensive Coordinator of the Week with us, and that's Mason Espinosa from DePauw University. Mason, great to have you here on the podcast.
Hey, really appreciate you having me. It'll be a fun few minutes here.
Definitely. Well, congratulations to you and the staff. This is the 2nd time DePauw's been honored. We had Coach McElwain on, your defensive coordinator, early in the season, so you guys are doing something right over there.
I appreciate it, man. I mean, this is an incredible team award or team recognition, however you want to slice it. To have both your offense and your defense honored in the same year, obviously your head coach is probably doing something right. So Coach Dietz is killing it, right? Our O staff, man, we really put the hours in. Coach Rudd is, in my opinion, the best O-line coach in the country. So this is as much his as anything. It's our players, right? They put the work in. They go out there and perform. So we appreciate the recognition from you guys, and it's received by all of us for sure.
Coach, you played quarterback at Ohio Wesleyan. I remember you playing there Tom Watt's first year when he took over the program. So your name was really familiar to me when it came across as, we were going to pick you as our offensive coordinator of the week. And the quarterback position, that's what we're going to focus on today. We always talk about workload with coaches and how we look at that over the course of the season as things started getting later in the year. And certainly we always think about the legs, but I think with the quarterback, looking at what we're doing with their arms is important too. These guys have been throwing since August. They're going to still continue to throw the ball a lot, but we need to be smart with what we do over the course of the week. And would love to hear your approach on that. And I know receivers do come into play with this too, because you can't have those guys, running full routes all week long, all season long, and expect them to be fresh every game week if you're not doing something over the course of the year to make sure you monitor that workload. So we'll look at both of those approaches. I guess let's start with the QBs.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're spot on. obviously early in the year, you're developing an offensive identity in camp in the first couple of weeks where, man, you got to throw it, and you got to throw it a lot, and you got to find, man, what you do really well and your concepts. So you are throwing it a lot. So I think the first step, probably at least for us, is awareness of that from the quarterback perspective and making sure they're taking care of their arm on the front end, right? Because the big thing, at least for us, is that, man, like receivers' legs, like those regenerate, like arms don't regenerate. Once you have dead arm, like you got to shut it down for a while. So it's knowing there's a lot of reps to be had out there. So making sure earlier in the year that they're taking care of their arm and they're icing and they're stretching and they're doing all that stuff that they need to, even if they're not sore. And then kind of later in the year, tapering that off, right? As you get into week 6, 7, 8, kind of the spots we are now, you've developed your base concepts. You've developed probably what you're good at least what you want to hang your hat on. So now it's repping new game plan stuff, but also like taking advantage of the mental reps, right? Like extra meeting time, those extra 20, 30 minutes of meetings you can have with quarterbacks. I know one thing we do in practice, I think has been really effective for us. We're so RPO based. We're reading ball and belly RPOs a lot, whether it's first level, second level, third level, to be able to take like dry mental reps, right? And we have a counter call with a backside glance or whatever you want to call it. Like, hey, quarterback, we want you to hand it off, right? We want to get a good look at the counter, but I want you to go ahead and look at that backside safety and be able to read and see what he's doing and get a rep of reading it. And then I want you to go ahead and act like, hey, you're going to get a pull read. So I want you to go ahead and get the football, but pull out of there, put your back foot in the ground and go ahead and get a rep like you're throwing it so that you have the timing, you have the visualization of it without actually putting that rep live on your arm and also getting a rep of carrying the football. I think that's been a little more emphasized probably this year in our practice. I really think it's paying some dividends right now. Yeah,
it still allows them to get that mental aspect of what they're doing because they are reading every single play. And I think you bring up something important there. If you're an RPO-based team, there's the chance that if you're not controlling it, those guys are throwing a heck of a lot more balls in practice maybe than you want them to. So finding ways to limit that but still get the rep, I think, is important.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, obviously from a coaching perspective, you want to practice running the football too. If you're an RPO-based team and you don't want to look through a 10-play script and all of a sudden you threw 9 passes and 4 of them were bubbles and 2 of them were slants, like you want to run the football and practice running the football a little bit too. So it's a little twofold there where you can control practice and as far as what that looks like while also getting your quarterback to work in a more kind of traditional sense there.
We are at that point in the season where we have a ton of reps into our base concepts, the things that we run every single week, the things that appear in our game plan every week. So now it's keeping them fresh mentally on that and getting the right amount of reps, right? You got to kind of look at it as those reps are at a premium. How many reps do your starting receivers need to get that right? You got to think about their legs too, right? So there's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah, absolutely. There is a lot that goes into it there. I think it's all relative to what you're doing, right? If it's a base concept that maybe you've thrown since day 1 or day 2 or day 3 install, maybe you're good with getting that once in a period or once a day and you feel good about it, where if it's something that's a little bit new, you need it a couple more times. So it's really all relative to the workload and obviously how the receivers are feeling. We're pretty blessed right now as far as having some experience at receiver. With that comes with age. So there's some natural soreness post game day. So we take it easy on a little bit earlier and we kind of ramp it up later. But we generally don't have sets of team that's longer than 12 plays, right? How long minute-wise that goes is kind of relative to what the period is. But we generally don't have sets longer than 12 plays. And if you're not getting your work in by those 12 to 13 plays, then you probably got too much in anyway, to tell you the truth.
I know you said you also look at situationally how you're doing things too. For example, I know we would always do our red zone or our 3rd and longs on certain days of the week. And you want to watch where you're doing those and try to maybe front end load the reps earlier in the week so that they get a little bit more time off before game day.
For sure, yeah. I think you're spot on there where it's real, at least for us, we play on Saturday. So I think it's real traditional probably to do like some 3rd down stuff on Thursday. And that naturally includes your 3rd and long. And you're probably running some type of vertical concepts or stuff where you're pushing the ball down the field. And you need reps at those for sure. But it's also hard on your receivers, specifically also your quarterback, to all of a sudden you've run 5 reps of 4 verticals in a 12-play set. And you're like, man, we just ran them really hard 48 hours before a game day. So I think part of that is taking game plan days and peeking ahead at third down and to start sprinkling those in and repping those on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, right? Whether you're telling the guys, hey, this is a third down set, or you're running in and giving them a third down look, to be able to front load that in the week, I think has been able to help take some reps off them on a Thursday, right? Where now you can pare down your Indy period. You're not running as much, right? You can pare down your team period, and it feels a lot crisper, and you're more fresh going into game day on Saturday.
Yeah, I think that's the bad part of saying, hey, our third downs are this period, because you're going to spend a lot of time throwing the ball. So yeah, later in the week, that's not good. I always liked on Thursdays to think of that as more like simulated drives. And when you think of that, you are mixing up the down and distance. You're not having to throw 3 third and long plays in a row. So it also gives more of that game feel, because the game is played in context, right? So we know down and distance, and usually those are going to follow in some certain order.
For sure. Yeah, that's incredibly helpful for sure. And it's like you said, I think that's the perfect way of putting it. Like the game is played in context, right? You're never just running plays in a vacuum, right? You're always running it for a reason on a Saturday. So sometimes it's easy to fall into a trap on a Wednesday or Thursday where we're just running plays. I think Coach D, he does a lot of things really well, but one of the best things he does as a head coach is always providing us with a situation where we're working on something and not just running plays in a vacuum. And both offensively and defensively, I think that really pays off, because our kids, they're used to playing situational football. And you see it every week in the NFL and college football. Like, football's won situationally more so than it is probably any other time.
Now, does Coach Jeets let you guys know what you're going to be doing ahead of time, or does he spring that out on you out on the field?
You know, it's a little bit of both. He earlier in the year, he'll let you know, right? We meet every day to talk about practice. Early in the year, he'll kind of let you know. But recently, as you get into the season, like, man, he'll just spring it on you, and he'll just put situation on the practice plan, and we don't know. And I think those get me fired up more than anything, because that's the most game-like thing you can do. Like, man, we talk about players needing practice all the time, but like me as a play caller, I need practice too, right? I got to be able to handle a sudden change, and all of a sudden we got the ball on the -1 and 1st and 10, and I got to know what I'm going to call, right? And those to me are the really fun periods for sure.
Yeah, I think those are so good. I wish, looking back on it, that we would have done more of those. We did a really good job of scripting things over the week and making sure everything got its work. But I think you bring up such an important point, is that you as a coach need reps too. And so why wait till game day to get your reps? Why not throw some of those in, even if they're short periods, 5-minute period, where you get some plays in and you're working those situations as they happen?
Yeah, absolutely. We're humans too. You know what I mean? We've been doing it probably a little longer than these players, but man, it's still hard. It's a very hard thing to do, is to call plays both offensively and defensively, and to coach in general, offensively and defensively. So if you're always scripted, it's just fun to coach those guys during the scripted periods. But to me, lining up and doing some unscripted stuff is a blast, because it's so competitive, right? And you want to be competitive, but it allows you a chance to work on yourself and reflect on, like, man, I felt really good about that series, or man, I didn't feel good about that series. I should have done this, right? And I didn't put us in a great situation, and I probably should have done this instead. So when the bullets are flying on Saturday, you kind of know what direction you're heading. No
doubt. Great stuff. Well, Coach, I appreciate you taking the time with us here during the season. Congratulations again on being named our D3 Offensive Coordinator of the Week, and best of luck to you and the Tigers the rest of the way.
Awesome. I really, really appreciate it. Appreciate your time. This is a great team recognition, and we really appreciate it. We just got to keep getting better day in and day out.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. You might say all kinds of stuff when things go wrong, but these are the words you really need to remember. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. They've got options to fit your unique insurance needs, meaning you can talk to your agent to choose the coverage you need, have coverage options to protect the things you value most, file a claim right on the State Farm mobile app, and even reach a real person when you need to talk to someone. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
Our next coach we're going to recognize is our D3 Defensive Coordinator of the Week. Who do you have for us, Logan?
This week, that honor goes to Mark Carey of Mary Hardin-Baylor. The Crew this week defeated Howard Payne 41-0. Howard Payne is always an explosive offense, and Mary Hardin-Baylor shut them down. They held them to under 200 total yards on 3.3 yards per play. And this is one of those games where the defense outscored the offense that they went against. They forced 3 turnovers, had 1 return touchdown, gave their offense a lot of short fields, and they only allowed 1 third down conversion the entire game. And they did that a lot of different ways. They did it by limiting big plays. They did it with 8 tackles for loss, 4 pass breakups, in addition to the 3 interceptions. And they also opened the game with 5 3-and-outs on the first 6 drives of the game. So they just did not let Howard Payne get off the ground at all at the beginning of the game, and that led their team to a pretty convincing victory. Congrats to Coach Carey and his staff at Mary Hardin-Baylor.
Let's talk to Coach Carey and how he sets up his players to be dominant on defense. We're here with our D3 Defensive Coordinator of the Week for Week 7, Mark Carey at Mary Hardin-Baylor, with their big 41-0 win over Howard Payne. Coach, congratulations on a big win and being recognized as our D3 Defensive Coordinator of the Week.
Thank you very much. It's an amazing honor, and we have great players that played really well on Saturday.
Yeah, and I know this is always a collective effort, and I'm sure you want to make mention of some of the guys who are with you along the way for this journey.
Yeah, absolutely. Our head coach, Larry Harmon, is a longtime mentor of mine. I played for him, GA'd for him, and then kind of moved up the ranks for him, and now he's our head football coach, and I get to continue to learn from him every day. We got a great defensive staff. Nick Brace is our defensive tackles coach. Jordan Wilson coaches our secondary. Jordan Collins coaches our defensive ends. And we got 2 really great GAs, Chris Childress and Dorian Williams, and they do an amazing job to make sure our kids are ready to play on Saturday.
Coach, I know you mentioned to me that, hey, maybe we don't do anything special or different than other people do. And I think that's true when we look across the game. I mean, there's always, you look across the way, people are running similar things or you see similar things on film. It all boils down to how you do it. And a big part of that for you, as you mentioned, is you really want your teaching and coaching to be moving to the point that your players are empowered to do what they need to do on game day to be successful.
Absolutely. I think, what we do, I don't think anybody does anything special. It's usually how you do it. Like you said, we really try to educate our players, number one, on defensive fundamentals of their position, and then how offenses can attack you. Because, I tell our guys all the time, offensive coaches get paid too. I mean, they're going to have schemes and they're going to have counters to what we're doing. And we got to be able to have in-game, snap-to-snap answers to those. On defense, we don't get to punt, so we don't need to wait to come to the sideline to make that adjustment from a coaching standpoint. We try to really build our guys' toolbox up is what we use, and what tools you have situationally through every position to be able to see what an offense is doing to attack you and give you the best chance to be able to go be a productive player for us on defense.
Coach, to make that tangible to our listeners, would you take a position and give some examples of how you do that, how that's done in your process to teach these guys and how that translates to game day? Like you said, you guys can't say, okay, we're going to run the ball here on 3rd down and then punt and get off the field. I mean, that's not always up to you. So you do need guys to think on the fly, make adjustments on the fly. So if you could give us like a tangible example of that, I think that'd be helpful to our listeners.
Well, let's say you're playing a 3 technique. You're a defensive tackle, and everybody's the same. You're a 3 technique. You're an edge player. You want your man hand down. But now I want that guy to look at his environment. We want to look at our offensive lineman. We're on the guard. What position is he in? Vertical position as far as his line of scrimmage, right? Is he really heavy on the line of scrimmage? Is he kind of off the line of scrimmage? Is he really deep off the line of scrimmage? What's our A-gap split? We give our guys a base split of what a base split looks like, a certain distance. And then we want to make sure that we don't vary off of that. Because if an lineman they want to run zone trap and that lineman wants to create a little bit bigger A-gap to let him get down on the Mike linebacker. Well, now he's going to try to split you out of that gap and widen you out and make that A-gap bigger for that Mike linebacker. So he's got the ability to be able to adjust his alignment based on a split, reading stances. We're really big here at being able to look at that offensive lineman and what his demeanor is. Is he backed off on the line of scrimmage in a C position for us, where the weight's distributed in his body? Is he in the position where he's going to pull? That's going to change our get off. We're in more of a read environment based on down and distance, but I see a guy with a light hand. That's going to change my get off from more of a read get off to more of an attack get off. We do the same thing with our linebackers. You know, everybody is big now with the RPO game and spreading people out horizontally on offense. You get linebackers in those positions where they're stressed. They got to be able to cover a B gap and be able to be a curl flat player. And those people moving those curls way out there, what are his tools that he can use? He's got calls he can give the defensive line to execute a stunt to try to cancel those gaps out. Just those little things that everybody has. What is an offense doing to try to stress you? And if they're stressing you in a way that's going to prevent you from being able to do your job, what tools can we give those guys? So that's what we spend an entire amount of time on throughout the week is we line up to this formation. Where are we stressed? Who's the person that's going to be in trouble? What can we do to try to give them a little bit of relief so they can go play fast? Because we're a fast attacking defense. Our job as coaches is to make sure our guys go out there and play with reckless abandon on every snap. And if they're confused, they can't do that. If they're in a compromised position, they can't do that. And I don't think there's any great defense out there that if their kids are playing slow, that they're going to be playing good defense. And so those are kind of some of the things that we use. We talk about lineman splits, how we want to adjust to them. We're not one of those teams that'll widen out with you. The old Texas Tech and Hal Mummy, Mike Leach, they get those big old splits. I mean, we've lined up 4 guys across the middle in the gaps and make sure that we can still get to the quarterback. We don't want to let an offense dictate how we line up. And so I think that's something that we spend an extraordinary amount of time compared to maybe some other people doing. And I think when you go out, we played a really great game this last Saturday, and I think our guys were able to go play fast and make those adjustments snap to snap. And when you do that, you usually end up coming out successful on the other end.
Yeah, I love that approach. And the way you talk about it is, you're giving them details, and every play has a little bit of a mental process. I know on the offensive side of the ball, having coached quarterbacks forever, we always have, depending on the type of play, they had a brief little mental checklist that they were looking at things so they can make their adjustments and make sure we were in the right thing. Is that kind of how it works for you guys? Do you find that maybe some guys learn it differently? I guess what's the approach in making sure these guys get those details and are able to process really quick so they are making those adjustments?
It takes a lot of time, and it's really frustrating. When we've been, in 20, I'm trying to think what year that was. It was 21. We won a national championship, played a lot of really good teams along the way, and we had a pretty veteran defensive line, and we ran a lot of things through them. And it was incredible what they could see in game. Now, we had a bunch of seniors on that line. The next year, we're trying to do those same things, but we got freshmen and sophomores that played on our JV the last year. And if those guys, if you haven't put them in those situations enough and let them sometimes fail and learn from it, that's what it takes. You got to be willing to kind of sometimes, hey, we're going to do this if we think this guy's in a C position with a light hand and he thinks it's C position and light hand and it's not, and we can be exposed a little bit. But sometimes the more you can do that in practice so it doesn't show up on Saturdays. I mean, offenses are all the same. They're lining up people exactly how they need them to be able to execute something. Now, an offensive lineman's not lining up a particular way because he wants to. He's probably coached to do that. A running back, wherever that running back aligns, he's not doing that by accident. The number 2 receiver cutting his split down to get to mesh, that's not something he's just lining up wherever he wants to. He's been coached on that all. That's where sometimes you get these really talented, well-coached teams. Sometimes they're a little bit easier to defend because they tell you exactly what they're going to do. Now, they do it at a high level, so that's a whole nother issue. But offenses will mostly tell you what you do. And if you can limit, all of a sudden, I got, based on my keys, if I'm a defensive end, now I know I'm going to get a down blocked, and it's either going to be a kick out or I'm getting red. And now all of a sudden I can eliminate everything else from my thought process and just be able to go play those two things instead of trying to play the offense's whole playbook every snap.
Coach, I imagine as you get more of that veteran group, like you mentioned, the national championship year, you probably start to see a lot of that show up in the film room with those guys and those guys communicating in that way rather than you having to always, I guess, bring them through that they probably at some point are able to take over and point those details out that they're seeing on film, which again is going to translate to them being able to play fast on the field.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. When you get guys to start seeing it, the coaching gets a lot easier. I mean, when you got great players and they're seeing the game, how you've really helped them see the game the last couple of years, they're making those in-game adjustments. We've switched stunts when we've read pass and wanted to get particular line stunts in, and all of a sudden they switch their protection, but our guys see that and they're able to flip a stunt. And so you get to the point where you really can't ever be wrong as long as you're reading it right.
Yeah, I imagine too, they're able to coach up the guys you're lining up against them on the scout team. And those guys are reading a card, and sometimes they don't see those details. I know when we had those players like you're describing who were empowered to do it, like they would, tell a receiver, for example, tell that corner, this is where I need you to line up. Like, I know that's what the card says, but here's the detail of it. And that just makes it easier too when your guys know, like, hey, that's not how they do it. I need you to do it this way.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. And it really creates a really great team chemistry along the way, especially at our level. There's always those guys that are scout team guys for you, and that's the hardest job anybody has on the team. Nobody really wants to go over and play scout team, but when they hear an All-American defensive lineman or linebacker saying, hey, this is how I need it to look because this is how it's going to look, and they start taking ownership and making sure they're giving that guy the great look every time, and then being able to go watch us go perform on Saturday, I think it really buys into the chemistry part of your football team, which is a huge part of any successful program. If you got buy-in across the board, it's huge. And once you get those guys seeing it and really coached up on it, man, they just continue to excel, and then they just get more hungry because they feel the success from it. There's not a player playing football that doesn't want to be successful. We demand our guys do some really hard things, so it's frustrating for younger players that just want to go play football. I just want to go run fast and hit people. When they start learning the finer points of the game and they have success with it, that just makes them more hungry for more information and more things they can do. They can put them in that position to get that tackle for loss or sack or whatever it is. When they have that opportunity to go play fast and then they see the benefits of it on Saturdays, once you got that, I mean, you get the buy-in across the board.
Yeah, I love it. I love how that comes together. And it's just for you, it's that validity that, okay, we're doing some things right as coaches that these guys have learned it to this point. And obviously that's paid off for you guys a lot at Mary Hardin-Baylor, a very successful program. And Coach, I want to thank you for taking the time. And again, congratulations to you and your staff on being recognized as our defensive coordinator of the week.
Well, thank you very much. We have a great program. We got a lot of great young men that work their tail off and believe in each other and believe in the coaches. And when you have that, it makes everything a lot easier.
The Volvo XC60 plug-in hybrid is about performance. Not just on the road, but in life. With not only trunk space, but room to make memories. It's electric, with a backup plan, where the only speed that matters is how fast you can slow down. The Volvo XC60 plug-in hybrid. Performance where it matters the most. Visit volvocars.com/US to learn more.
Our final recognition is always our head coach and staff of the week. Who do we have this week?
This week's head coach of the week goes to Eric Jendryaszek of TCNJ.
TCNJ beat Kean this week 48-7. And the way they did that was by winning in every single phase. They outgained Kean by 460 yards to 166, and they about tripled up their yards per play. They had 6.8 yards per play to Kean's 2.4. They did it with big plays on defense, 5 interceptions, 2 of those returned for touchdowns. And then offensively, they had 350 yards passing, 4 passing touchdowns, 20 yards per completion. And again, back to the defense, they only allowed 24 yards rushing, less than 1 yard per attempt. This was a outstanding performance from the Lions at TCNJ, and congrats to Coach and the rest of his staff on being honored as our coaching staff of the week.
Let's talk to Coach and hear how he and his staff are getting it done at TCNJ. Joining me now is our Week 7 D3 head coach of the week, and also representing his staff, the head coach at the College of New Jersey, Coach Eric Jendryaszek. Coach, great to have you here on the podcast, and congratulations on being recognized as our head coach of the week.
It's awesome to be here, Keith, and I really appreciate this incredible honor. Thank you for this nomination.
Yeah, Coach, obviously this is a collective effort in this award that we give, and want to make sure you had the opportunity to recognize and talk about those guys who are with you along the way here.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I wouldn't be here with, first and foremost, our 3 coordinators. I think with me being in this interim role, it has made my job extremely easy as far as just letting them do what they do best. First off, Coach Mershman does a tremendous job coordinating our offense, and I think we're having an elite year when it comes to that. And then also Coach Edwards, he's done a great job, I think, week in, week out with our defense, coordinating them, creating turnovers. And then our special teams coordinator, Coach Grandinetti, he's also been doing a phenomenal job just making sure that he's constantly evaluating as well. So those 3 coordinators are doing a great job. And we've also got some elite assistant coaches that really do it for the love of the game as well. And I'm honored to coach alongside with those guys.
Coach, we're going to get into an idea here. We're going to look at practice structure today. And it's something we've talked about here on the podcast quite a bit. I know as we get into this time of the year, later season, people are always interested in how they can become more efficient and do things better. And that's the key for you guys is efficiency, as you mentioned it to me. I mean, a high academic institution, these guys obviously have a lot of other things to do. So that and, the 20-hour rule, we got to be efficient anyway. But you guys take that level of detail into the practice planning very seriously. So we'd love to hear how you guys do it.
Yeah, I think the first thing, that we do differently than others is we don't call it scout when we do our team sessions. We do all of our team sessions as service. So we'll have a defensive emphasis versus an offensive emphasis. When the defense is up, they'll have their 1s and 2s and then back to 1s. While the 1s are going, they're going against our 2 offense. When the 2s are going against, they're going against our 3 offense. And then we'll circle back so we get the good versus good in every team session. And then we'll flip it when it's the offense's turn, when it's the offensive emphasis. And on top of that, we also will have those GVG periods where we are going to be practicing those in-game scenarios, whether it's 4th down, 3rd down, coming out. Another thing that I think from a practice structure that I really like what we do is, after we get through the dynamic warm-up, we'll have some type of kick element, and then we go right into a GVG. Trying to simulate the same thing to a start of a football game. I think it's important for us to go on both sides, be able to come out the gates and execute our offense and defense. So I think that's been really, really good as well. And then we're also practicing our 2-point plays, which we've taken advantage of this season a couple of times already. So it's not just a one-off. So I think that's one thing that my previous ops that we do differently here that's paid huge dividends.
So with the special teams rep, is that just one rep and then you guys go right into the good on good, or you take a little bit of time and then get into it?
No, we'll take about a 5-minute period. Oftentimes it's going to be field goal or field goal block because we kind of want the majority of team to be stagnant, simulating that kickoff element. Also the coin flip. Hey, you've warmed up now, but now your body's a little cool. So now, boom, now we go after that special teams phase. We go right into a good versus good or a drive drill or something where you have to now turn it on. And I think that's been huge for our guys, just learning how to turn it on and off throughout the flow of a game, especially if they're a lineman that maybe not are not on a ton of special teams.
Yeah, I think we've become very good at going as fast as we can in practice. But you mentioned, an important part of it there that in the game, you are going to be sitting around for a few minutes before you go out there. After you warm up pregame, same deal in working those transition periods too, getting a special team on the field and then getting them off and getting the offense and defense on the field are two things we might work in a mock-up game at the end of the week in a walkthrough, but giving it more of that realistic game feel in the full practice days.
Yeah, that's crucial for us. So kind of looking at like a Tuesday's practice, we'll start off with that special teams. We'll go right into something competitive. Then we don't want to spend more than 15 minutes in a team service period. Any longer than that, it's not, necessarily realistic. We want to then get into one of the facets of special teams, and we constantly keep on that transition so our guys kind of get that ebb and flow that is similar to a game-like experience.
So let's talk a little bit about the team service periods. I think that's a place that people always look for being more efficient. I mean, if you don't prepare that well, if you're not organized, you start to create downtime for your offense or defense because the service team isn't ready there.
Yeah, we're kind of a little bit fortunate here at TCNJ because we run such an up-tempo offense. It really makes it easy for us to get a ton of reps in like a 15-minute period. So like in a 15-minute period, oftentimes we will run 24 plays between the defensive emphasis and then the offensive emphasis, and that includes the transition time with both sides of the ball. How we do that, obviously, it's the coordinators meeting together, trying to use the same language. Oftentimes in a service period, we may only use 3 or 4 cards. We want to be able to put it in our vernacular, our terms as much as possible, because it's also a way for us to develop our guys. The more we can use our language and get them lined up, I think the biggest adjustment for us when it's the defensive turns is just cutting back our splits back to normal splits. Because, when it's an offensive emphasis, our splits are pretty wide. But we do a great job. Our coordinators do a great job working together to make sure we're flying around in those segments and we're not wasting time and we're efficient and we're getting as many reps as we can.
So taking a look at, you're mentioning your coordinators working together to get the practice organized. You guys played, and you're named the staff of the week because you played a very complementary style of a game here where offense and defense really performed well. And I think that takes some coordination. I think anytime you're in up-tempo offense, that forces you to be on the same page even more with the defense to know what the needs are of the team. So how do you facilitate that as the head coach?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, it's just our goals. I think obviously our offensive coordinator, our goals are to play as fast as possible and see as many snaps, right? The more possessions, the more opportunities we're going to be able to put the ball in the box. And then the defense trying to provide those opportunities, right? Whether it's obviously ideally creating 3 and outs, but then I think when you're not doing that, but just getting turnovers, creating turnovers is huge. That's another way to just get the offense the ball more so we have more opportunities to kind of get it in the box. And I think our defensive coordinator and our defensive players have done a great job thus far creating those opportunities for the offense.
When you look at your role on game day with your coordinators, in that sometimes at the D3 level, a lot of guys have a role at least in one of those. How do you go about managing the game? What do you see your primary role as on game day to make sure everything's going as you planned in the overall team game plan?
Yeah, my main goal is to make sure that the coordinators are in the right calls that they want to be in. I think the biggest thing that I've tried to focus on this year being my first year as a head coach is just maximizing the efficiency of using our timeouts, especially in the first half. I think sometimes coaches forget that, and they go to half with 1 or 2 still in their pocket. We will utilize that, whether it's we don't like the call, the defense looks gassed. Like I try to make sure every game that I'm utilizing those 3 in the first half to the best of my ability. And then my main job, besides making sure that, I'm trying to work with the O-line. So because I've got such great coordinators, whether you're talking about Coach Mershman, Coach Edwards on the defense, or even Coach Grandinetti in the special teams, it allows me to kind of visit the bench and make sure my O-linemen are good. They need something drawn up, whether it's something with a stunt, a box, like I can step away because I have the utmost confidence in those 3 coordinators to handle it while I may take a couple minutes with the offense on the bench. So I think that's been huge. And then obviously just trying to do my best to manage the end of the game and those different scenarios that pop up.
Coach, I appreciate you taking the time and giving us a peek at what you guys do, and certainly want to wish you and the Lions the best of luck the rest of the season here.
Awesome, Keith. I really appreciate you reaching out, and this is a hell of an experience for me.
Take out, hop in, and save up on Uber One this fall with Verizon. For a limited time, Verizon customers can get 3 free months of Uber One. That means $0 delivery on eligible food, groceries, and more, and 6% Uber One credit earned on eligible rides. It's just another way to save on the subscriptions you love at Verizon.com/Spotify. Subscriptions available at Verizon.com/PlusPlay. At 3-month promo, subscription auto-renews monthly at $9.99 plus taxes unless you cancel. Visit Uber.com/Uber1 for terms.
Logan, it's getting down to crunch time. We'll be talking about our Week 8 winners next week, Week 8 of 11 in the D3 football season. All things are starting to shake out. Playoff pictures will start to develop here in the next couple of weeks. So an exciting time in D3 football.
Yeah, for sure. It's especially exciting because this year we get 8 extra playoff teams, and every week I put out simulations of the season to see who's likely to get into the playoffs or not. And this week I'm definitely starting to notice a lot more interest in those projections. Teams that are sitting undefeated or 1 loss or undefeated in conference, they're starting to think, hey, this is going to be a good year for us. So it's exciting to see that excitement start to pick up for teams across the country. And
for our coaches out there or people who would like to follow that, what's the best way for them to do that?
They can follow me on Twitter. That's Loghan, Loghan ratings, or you can just go to my website. That's hansonratings.github.io and reach out to me, DM me if you have any questions. I'm always happy to answer people's questions about what I'm trying to do for D3.
Thanks again, Logan, and we'll be back at it next week. Be sure to check out our partners, Vertical Raise, for your fundraising needs, Modern Football Technology for analytics and in-game decision-making, and Signature Championship rings when you win the championship this year. Links and information to all of our partners can be found in the description and on coachandcoordinator.com in our 10% toolkit. Follow us on X at Coach K. Grabowski.